During the bitter winters of World War II, when the wind screamed across ruined fields and rain turned every camp into a swamp, survival meant more than courage. It meant shelter. Not from bullets, not from bombs, but from the cold, the mud, and the endless storms that devoured tents like paper. And out of that misery came an invention so simple, so resourceful, that it outlasted the very storms that threatened to end men's lives: the canvas tunnel. In the endless rain of the European fronts, soldiers faced an enemy that never slept: weather. Canvas tents flooded. Wooden huts collapsed. And in the front lines, where supply chains barely existed, men had to rely on what little they had: scraps of timber, tarps, and rope. But from that desperation came one of the war's quietest miracles: a tunnel shelter made from discarded tent fabric, tarpaulins, and salvaged pipes. No general ordered it. No blueprint existed. It began in the trenches, in the cold, sleepless nights of France, Russia, and Italy, where soldiers watched their tents buckle and their fires die. They realized that if they went lower, into the earth itself, and combined the trench with the canvas, they could create something sturdier, warmer, and invisible from above. A half-buried refuge, part dugout, part tunnel, all ingenuity. The design was crude, but brilliant: a shallow trench, waist-deep, lined with wood or metal scraps scavenged from bombed-out depots. Curved poles or bent saplings formed the frame. Over that skeleton, soldiers stretched layer upon layer of canvas, pulled tight, overlapping like armor plates. The seams were sealed with tar, wax, or even grease from their rations. Rain slid off instead of soaking in. Wind bent the fabric, but couldn't break it. What began as improvisation soon became a symbol of defiance: a handmade fortress against nature itself. The secret wasn't in the materials, it was in tension and layering. Each piece of fabric worked with the next, distributing force like muscle over bone. When the wind howled, the tunnels flexed instead of tearing. When the ground froze, the earth itself reinforced the structure. In a world of collapsing tents, these low, curved shelters stood firm, quietly keeping men alive. Inside, the tunnels were cramped, sometimes no taller than a man sitting down. But they were dry. The air was heavy with smoke and sweat, but also safety. A small stove, made from an artillery casing or a cut-down fuel can, glowed faintly in the corner. The warmth it gave off was precious, enough to dry socks, thaw fingers, and keep frostbite at bay. For men who'd fought for days in knee-deep mud, that warmth meant hope. The tunnel's shape gave it another gift: stealth. Its low profile made it nearly invisible from the sky. While bright tents caught moonlight, canvas tunnels melted into the landscape. They absorbed the rain, blended into the mud, and survived bombardments that shredded everything else. Some even deflected shrapnel, their arched frames dispersing the impact like modern blast shelters. As the design spread, each army, and even partisans, adapted it. On the Eastern Front, soldiers dug deeper, insulating the sides with logs and sandbags to survive -30 nights. In North Africa, the same concept was flipped. Half-buried tunnels created shade and airflow instead of warmth. Every version shared the same principles: low profile, flexible walls, layered waterproofing, and earth for strength. Military engineers took notice. Reports from Allied observers in Italy described entire camps built with these improvised tunnels: homes of mud, rope, and resilience. They cost nothing, required no transport, and could be built in hours. And when storms swept through and tore down the officer tents, it was the men in their muddy canvas burrows who slept through the night. It was more than luck. The arched shape distributed pressure evenly, a principle used today in aircraft hangars and disaster shelters. Layered canvas acted like modern composite fabric, combining flexibility and strength. Even the mud played its part, sealing gaps, insulating walls, and locking the structure in place. In essence, these soldiers reinvented what architects would later call tensile shelter design, using physics, not just fabric. For the men inside, it wasn't just engineering, it was psychological survival. When bombs fell and the world shook, they could crawl into the earth and feel the storm pass overhead. They could rest, write letters, or simply breathe without fear of the tent collapsing. In those small, silent spaces, humanity endured, soaked, cold, but unbroken. Among the forests of Yugoslavia and France, local resistance groups took the idea further. They built entire tunnel networks, connecting sleeping quarters, storage, and command posts, all covered by canvas, mud, and courage. These hidden shelters withstood bombardments, rainstorms, even the changing seasons. They became invisible villages beneath the soil, the underground heartbeat of resistance. Today, survivalists and explorers study the same techniques, often without realizing their wartime roots. The principles are timeless: dig low, reinforce, layer, tension, and ventilate. In jungles, deserts, and disaster zones, the same logic saves lives. A simple tarp, when shaped and anchored right, can defy weather just like it did 80 years ago. The canvas tunnel isn't just a relic, it's a message that even when everything collapses, when the world seems too cold, too broken, human creativity finds a way. It's proof that the greatest inventions often come not from factories, but from desperation and willpower. In the mud of war, men built something stronger than any issued gear. They built hope with their own hands. So the next time you hear stories of the great weapons and machines of World War II, remember this: some of the most powerful tools weren't made of steel or fire. They were made of canvas, rope, and mud. They didn't win battles on maps, but they kept men alive long enough to fight another day. The WWII Canvas Tunnel didn't just outlast storms, it outlasted fear, hunger, and despair. And in doing so, it became a quiet symbol of the human will to survive. If you found this story of forgotten ingenuity inspiring, subscribe to Forgotten Survival. Because history isn't just about the wars we fought. It's about the ways we endured them.